Good evening, everybody. How y'all doing? Ladies and gentlemen, I am Sherman D. Manning in Los Angeles, California, and I am very glad to have this marvelous opportunity to meet and to greet with those of you, our brothers and our sisters. The most important persons, so far as this podcast is concerned, is not Sherman. The most important persons are you, the listeners. Your presence makes me better. Without you, I would be nothing. Without you, the podcast is meaningless. I would be just a buffoon, engaging in idle chatter, falling in love with the sound of my own voice. And so I thank you so very kindly from the bottom of my heart from everything that is inside me. Thank you for being you, and thank you for joining me. This is for you. Thank you for your presence. Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Praise Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. This is the day which the Lord hath made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. Hallelujah. I have been working frantically today to try to sit down with all of you very, very important brothers and sisters who are out there in podcast land and say something to you and respond to the things that you're saying to me. And so first and foremost, let me begin by thanking you for tuning into this podcast. Thank you for being a part of what we are trying to do here on the Sherman D. Manning podcast. Would you please be so kind as to send me an email and tell me what you think of the podcast, as many of you have already done. Let me hear from you if you're listening in, please. Just simply email me at SHERMANDMANNING@gmail.com. And I thank you very kindly in advance for taking out the time to email an old sinner like me. Chief of sinners, as Paul called himself. Thank you. Greetings to you in San Jose, California, to you in Atlanta, Georgia, to you in Los Angeles, California, to all of my friends and associates, and to our listeners in Phoenix, Arizona, in Los Angeles, California, in Sacramento, those in the Netherlands, those in Guam, those in Oman, wherever you are listening. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, as the old folk used to say, thank you for tuning in. Do me a special favor, would you please? Please, please, pretty please, as kids used to say, we say with sugar on top of it. Would you please be kind enough to take out 3 minutes of your time as we engage even in the preliminaries right now? Text, email, or telephone 3 friends and tell them today to tune into this podcast. Tell them to listen live. Tell them to get it on demand. Tell them to go to Spreaker.com, Spreaker.com, and get this podcast on demand. Tell them they don't know anything about me. I'm just an ex-con. Someone who went to prison for a crime he did not commit, which happens every day in this country. But they don't know me. I'm a fledgling author, fledgling speaker, and Baptist preacher. And so they don't know anything about me. And the only way they're ever going to know that I even exist on the planet is if one of you, some of you, all of you, are kind enough to take out your time to tell them you're listening. So let them listen also. Tell your friends, your enemies, and those in between. Just text them right now. Drop them a line. Tell them, hey, check this guy out. Listen to what he has to say. Tell them to listen to this podcast. Go to YouTube. We did a brand new video today, and I don't know whether it's up yet or not. I'm waiting on my technical guy to call me now. You hear the ringing in the background. Quite frankly, that is probably him telling me that it's up now, we'll be up later, or we'll be up tomorrow. There he is again. And so what I would like for you to do, please, if you don't mind, is also text, call, or email 3 friends and tell them to go to YouTube and look up videos by Sherman D. Manning and take a look at what we have to say. Now, there's a lot of podcasts listed there for me, audio only, probably about 150 of them last time I checked. I'm not asking you to listen to those. I'm asking you to have them to look at the videos. There should be 6 up, and if the one I did today is up now, it'll be 7. But just tell them to go to YouTube, punch in my name, and take a look at the videos that we have done. I would also ask you to tell your friends to get a copy of The Truth About O.J. Simpson. After you get your copy, Race, Class, Money, and Justice. Get it at local bookstores. Get it on Amazon.com. And finally and foremost, I'd like you to pray for me. Ask God to order my steps, to give me the provision for the vision, to make me the kind of man, the kind of preacher that He would want me to be. Do those 3 or 4 things for me, and I would be most appreciative. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Donald came out of the closet today and finally tepidly endorsed John McCain and Paul Ryan. And you know what that was all about. My sources in Washington indicate to me that Ryan and McCain both threatened to withdraw their support for him and to basically meet the president's request by renouncing him. And they threatened to do that if he didn't come out and endorse them. This is a Republican Party that is in disarray. And I will agree that having Debbie of the Democratic Party, Wasserman Schultz, having to resign was bad timing and in bad form. And I wish that had not happened, and someone could rightfully criticize the Democratic Party for letting that happen right at election time. So hands down, that was foolish as egg on the face, and I'm not happy about that at all. But I will tell you that the Republicans continuously help the Democrats out by being in such a disarray themselves that people can't even focus on or marinate in the resignation because they're too busy looking at and thinking about all the stuff that's going on in the Republican Party. So that is why Donald came out and endorsed these people. Don't let anyone fool you. You heard it first here on this show. Donald was threatened. The Republican Party, Reince Priebus, Ryan, McCain, and others threatened to basically revolt against him, to come out and say that they no longer endorsed him, that they were pulling a Mitt Romney, so to speak, saying they could not endorse this guy if he did not endorse them. And so he did so, tepidly, and if you saw it, you could see his heart was not in it. It was not in it. Politics are dirty. They're dirty, baby. They're dirty. I learned that as a kid. Quite frankly, I got some very early life lessons. And my background is very complex, if you will. And I don't always talk about it, but I will tell you that as a kid preacher, I met Ambassador Andrew Young. And Andrew Young was running for mayor of the city at that time. And so I learned from him, since he had been on the national and the international stage with having contacts with over 90 nations at that time. I learned a whole lot about politics from watching him, from carrying his bags, from listening to him, from sitting in the car with him and him taking time out and talking to me. That is why I spend so much time talking to young people. I do, because I remember how impressed I was with this great man taking out time with me, talking to me, and basically showing me that he believed in me and that he thought I could succeed and that he thought I could be somebody and I could go somewhere. And those words and that encouragement have carried me through some of the toughest storms of my life. And so I want to encourage, and I know that I digress every person in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s, even those of you just in your 20s, if you find kids, 11, 12 years old, encourage them, motivate them, tell them that you see greatness inside of them, and help them to 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 cultivate that greatness inside of them. And so I learned so much from Andrew Young, and then I met Reverend Hosea Williams later. And Reverend Hosea Williams also, he and Andy both had in common that they worked with Dr. King. They were both on his staff, and they both had very interesting and sometimes diverse political views. Both were Democrats, of course, but Hosea was more of a radical militant, if you will. Andy was a pragmatist, and in many instances, a moderate and somewhat conservative on some issues, but conservative Democrat. There used to be such a thing, It wasn't just always the Republicans have to be conservative and the Democrats have to be progressive. But Andy was also progressive, so don't misunderstand that. And so I learned from these two guys. I sat at the feet of masters, strategists, and learned. Hosea ran for city councilman many times, won every election. He ran for state representative, which is like a state legislator in the state of California, and he won every election. And I just learned from watching these guys. Andy ended up running for governor of Georgia, and he lost that election. And I learned from watching him lose more about politics than I had ever learned from watching anybody win. And so my experiences in politics have been very, very interesting. And I have learned a lot from watching and looking and listening and paying attention. And, it's the best way to learn, OJT. And I'm glad that I was able to get that OJT from Uncle Andy Young and from Reverend Hosea Williams. And so I'm here to tell you politics are nasty. People will lie on you. People will put what we call a jacket on you, meaning a reputation that is false. And it's just a dirty sport. It really is. Full contact sport. There's no, it's a contact sport. There's no shoulder pads and no guard for no padding for your private parts. People just kick you in the nuts. It's not really French there, but it's not a vulgarity. Excuse my language, but they would just kick you in the guts or the nuts, and you have to take it like a man and keep going. And so, when I watch what's going on with Donald and what's going on with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, it is very, very interesting to watch. And I understand the process that is taking place. And I just hope that we get more young people to understand the process and to get involved. Because what I found is that once young people learn politics, they love it. You very, very rarely meet a young person who, having learned the process, doesn't like the process. I remember when I was a kid and I didn't know the game of football. I hated it, but the reason I hated it was because I didn't understand it. I didn't know what they were doing when they were bending over. I didn't know why one guy had the ball and he threw it back or hiked it back to another guy. I didn't know the difference between a quarterback and a center, which is why a lot of women don't like football, because they don't know the game. And I'm not denigrating women. I'm not misogynist like Donald is. Women who want to learn the game can learn it just as well as men do, and often enjoy it just as well as we do. But I'm saying by and large. But once I learned the game of football, I loved the game of football. Once I learned the game of basketball, I loved it. I don't know soccer. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Arguably, I could learn it. Haven't taken the time to do so, but if I learned it, I would probably love that also. So it's the same thing with politics. If young people understood the Electoral College, if they understood the Democratic platform, the Republican platform, partisanship, if they understood the deal making that goes on behind the scenes, the houses of Congress, the House of Representatives versus United States senators, if they understood what is really going on, and it was not just a bunch of names and numbers to them, and a bunch of mostly older white men running around suit and tie, carrying briefcases, getting on television, arguing, then they would love it. They would love it. And I say to them, if not now, when? If not you, who?